Really, so I want to just welcome each of you here who are here in person, and also I know we have a group that's listening virtually in, and then there are going to be folks that are going to listen in at their convenience. So just welcome to each of you as we kind of step into a new normal. So good to be here. Also want to begin by introducing some folks that you may have seen and may not have seen, and that is my team. If you can just wave Sherry up here on the right. She's been doing our finance work for about 12 years, and she's also now gotten into technology now that we've been doing a lot of webinars. And Brenda in the back here, Brenda joined us during COVID. A lot of you know her. She's our member and client coordinator. And glad to have you here, Brenda. And Karen from the back there in the red dress, she's been doing communications. You get lots of emails from Karen. Good to have you here. And Matt Sullivan. Some of you know Matt from when he was an alumni. We're actually part of our learning community. He's presented here before, part of the family business, was the president for 20 years, and now he's working with us and also working with many of you. So good to have you here, Matt, as well. So I wanted to begin with a quote that is pretty important to me. There it is. We've all, through kind of the pandemic, we've all been looking for connections. And I think there's a lot of healing. You know, we haven't been connected, at least not physically, many of us. And I just love this quote from Brene Brown that says, "Connection is the energy that is created when people feel seen, heard, and valued." And that's a big part of the work that we do, that families are all about. And I want to just honor my dad here because he was someone who always saw me and noticed me. And so happy belated Father's Day to you fathers here. And actually not just you fathers, but men who also just listen and nurture as well. So I thank you guys for joining us. We have, I was delighted when Brandon and Jim accepted my invitation to speak today. We're going to be concentrating on the Blue Mountain, and we've already had a meeting on the Red Mountain and the Gold Mountain and the Green Mountain. So today we're on the Blue Mountain. Look here. And before we do that, I also want to thank our sponsors here. We actually would not be here if it wasn't for Paula. Paula, can you just wave? This is Paula's Country Club Berkshire. Paula's from RKL. And we couldn't do our programs without our sponsors who have really stepped up over COVID and offered a lot of their assistance and support. So, I think we're going to just go right into a little bit of the flow of the morning. We are going to, first of all, begin with Brandon and Jim, and then we're going to move into our table talk at 9:55. So we're going to have some questions for you around the table. Then we're going to take a break, about a 20-minute break, and return to our tables at 10:30. Then we'll hear more from our panel, and then we're going to open it up for questions. And we call that our Candid Conversation. So if you are with us virtually, you can actually be on break from about 9:55 to 10:30. Okay, so Brandon and Jim, and also Henry is here with us as well. I invited Henry up here, our founder. Henry is actually Jim's boss in some ways because he's the board chair at Time. Okay, this is true accountability, which we'll be talking about as well, which is our theme this year. So I'm pleased that, well, how many of you have read the theme book, The Ideal Team Player? If you haven't read it, I really encourage you to read it. There's really good stuff in there. And Lanciani talks about 3 traits, about humble, hungry, and smart. And he talks about the ideal team players are all 3 of those, not just 1 or 2. It's really important to have all 3. And that's one of the reasons I invited Jim and Brandon, because I really feel that they have demonstrated humility. In other words, it's not all about them, servant leaders. The hungry, driven, goal-directed, and then smart. And when Sandy says that, he means kind of the emotional intelligence, empathetic, compassion, understands people, but they also have the intellectual smarts as well. So, guys, let's just step in here and Fran, let's hear from you first. How about you share a little bit about your background, a little about who you are, about the family, about the business, and your goals.
Sure. Well, first, before we get into it, I'd like to just thank you and Henry for having us here and just to comment on the work that you do is incredibly important for families. So, just know for our story, our family, we would not have been able to do a lot of what we did without Henry and Sally's support and guidance, and the work that they do is really incredible. So I just really want to thank you guys for that. This opportunity to share some time with Jen and talk a little bit. So I didn't memorize the order of my slides, so I'm just gonna see where we go here. But first, I think there's just a photo of my family, starting on the right side. You see Ethan and Lillian, they're my two children. They're 9 and 7. They're going to be in the 4th and 2nd grade this year at Faith Christian Academy up in now Quakertown. The picture on the right is the 4 of us at my sister's wedding this August. She was just remarried. It was a great time for us to be able to actually get together for a wedding. But you see me and Lynn, we've been married for 10 years. And we actually met at Vanguard when I was on my 5-year stint outside of the company, getting some outside of experience. So if there's one plug I can give for an outside employment policy, it is a way to possibly meet your future spouse. So I was blessed to have met her at work. And no, I was not her boss, nor was she my boss, but we just met mutually and really just built a great relationship together. So, one huge benefit for me working outside of the business, aside from the experience I got to meet my wife, and just 10 years of a great marriage and many more years to come. So next slide, please. So this is, just want to talk about my story a little bit. I started in the company at 12 years old, and I can remember the day I was actually sitting in front of the TV. I think I was playing some Nintendo or something, and my dad came in and said, "I've got plenty to keep you busy. Why don't you come in and work? You're at about that age." And I started sweeping floors at that time, prepping some material for testing or whatever they needed me to do, cleaning, painting, any of those things at 12. And it was pretty much the starting point of my tenure in laboratory testing. And I worked in various positions through those years through college. I went to Delaware Valley University, which is right in Doylestown, PA. Actually worked almost full time while attending college. And in my junior and senior year, in those summers, I took a little bit of a break from LTI. Just because I had been there so long, I said, you know what, it'd be great to get some other experience. I always wanted to move to the beach. So I got a job in hospitality, worked as a waiter at a restaurant, enjoyed some summers down at the shore for those 2 years. And then when I came back, I really had a heart-to-heart with my dad and met with some people that I think really highly of, just to help me really identify what's my kind of purpose and what do I want to accomplish. And I really wanted to just do something different. So I moved on and got my first job at Vanguard in 2004 and worked there for 5 years, and honestly really loved the experience. It was very similar to my journey at laboratory testing. I started in back office operations, which is basically almost like a manufacturing company for processing millions of transactions a day. So it was really high pace, intense environment where we had to get things done the day they were received due to federal law. And so it's just a really great experience on how to motivate people to work hard and bring it every day. And just something that I learned was really able to bring it back to LTI, aside from all the other great opportunities that I had at Vanguard. So I worked there for 5 years, various different levels of responsibility through my years there. And then in 2009, right after the market crash, I did find myself asking, man, is this really what I want to do? at that point, because it was a really hard environment to be in at Vanguard. And my dad came to me and said, hey, we're transitioning. I really want to start, thinking about the third generation, coming back to LTI. If this was something that you're interested, he's like, I'd love to have you back. I see all the great things that you're doing at Vanguard. If you'd be interested, I'd really like to have you come join the company. So I thought about it, talked to Lynn about it, and we made that decision together to come back to LTI. At this point, it's the greatest decision that I've ever made. But for the last 10 years, that's where I've been at LTI. I started there in January of 2010 in the customer service department, just learning the customers, supervising our customer service staff at that time. And then from there, just grew to various roles and responsibilities in the company. And then just in November of 2019, I took over as president of the company. And the picture that you see up there is what we call the baton handoff. So we passed the baton from my father to me. And really that was also a symbol of going from G2 to G3. We actually saw that as a symbol, like just going from one to the next. But we learned that from the Chick-fil-A family. They had attended, they did a presentation for Delaware Family Business early on, and my dad and I saw that. The family were like, man, we want to do that. So we had the baton, and we did that pass off, and really kind of closed the chapter, if you will, on the transition period.
Brandon, to that, do you remember what he said there, Kathy, about the baton?
I don't recall.
He said you need to take the baton. The next one is actually take it. And you did.
I did. So it immediately had my challenges in 2019. But we'll go into that probably later. So we want to go to the next slide. Just a little bit about LTI. I mean, if I can sum it up, what we do is that we perform materials testing for critical applications, usually where human life is at risk. So we're testing stuff for airplanes, nuclear submarines, power plants, all those. Anything that you would think is critical in nature, we do it. And our purpose around that is to provide our customers with peace of mind that they're getting data that has a lot of integrity behind it, and that we're doing everything right the first time, so that they can ultimately deliver results to their customers, what we call error-free and on time. Because one little error in the supply chain or a bad number that we would report may result of something that should not be passing requirements, getting into service, causing a recall type event. And you can see what happens with Boeing, going through their issues on, what a recall event could do. It's really critical the work that we do with the supply chain. So just some, we have multiple business lines. We do what's called destructive testing and non-destructive testing. There are two primary lines of business, and then we have a couple other various business lines beneath that, which just kind of morphed into that over the years opportunistically as customers came and asked us to, does LTI offer these services? At that time, we would say no, but we can do that for you if you have the work and you want us to get into that, we will. That's kind of how we have grown over the years. We've had several acquisitions as a result of that. We've had customers that said, hey, or that we want to buy our business. We think that you've been using our equipment for so long. We would want you to buy our company, or if it was a good fit, we did it. We just grew really naturally and organically as a result of that. We're nationally accredited lab, meaning that we're audited by our customers, our suppliers, and we have an overall system. We have about 60 audits a year from our customers in various industries, so we're very highly regulated and very, have to really apply to a lot of different requirements from customers and industry. So these are just some logos of some of the customers that we deal with. We deal with some of these directly and indirectly for their suppliers through the whole supply chain. A lot of names up there that you probably all recognize. The big ones for us now, excuse me, are the space flight companies. So you hear a lot about Blue Origin and Jeff Bezos going to space. We do a lot of testing for those programs, SpaceX, United Launch Alliance. It's just amazing what's happening in space flight today. And honestly, that's been a big part of really keeping us afloat in 2020. Space flight stuff. So that's like. So these are our mountains. I'm not going to go into all the details on the mountains, but I feel like we have a really good mountain landscape, if you would call it that. And I did hear one of the presentations prior on the board mountain, and I'm going to emulate that. I feel the same way, that we're climbing those mountains and then we're coming up and down. It's a journey up and down those mountains as we continually move and grow as a company, as a family. But we're doing a lot of work in our shareholder mountain, really just focusing on what do we want to do as shareholders, what are our goals, especially now after we've been through through the pandemic. And do we have a board composition? Do we have the leaders on our board to help us get there? And then in the management circle, I feel like we've had the strongest management team that we've really had in a really long time. I'm really excited to talk about that today in some more detail. And then finally, the family mountain, which is, I think, one of the more complex and bigger mountains there. And it is right out in front of us all in red. It's just so important. There's a lot of, we call it, a lot of grace, a lot of love, a lot of different things and emotions that happen in that mountain. But it's one of the most important, I think, in terms of the success of the family business. And just really thankful again for having support for us over the years in that mountain. And if we want to go from the family mountain just to see the full picture, this is the full G2, G3, and G4 from our baton handing event with the family. So we did it in the management circle, but then we also did it in the family mountain in November around the same time during the transition, just to say, hey, we're going from G2 to G3, and we did the same handoff in the family mountain as well. So that pretty much describes that. Anything else to hit on there?
Well, I'm just kind of beaming with pride because I remember the first time, I think, probably 20 years ago, sitting around the table when the family employment policy was getting introduced. The all family is just, I know many of you have met them, they've presented before, they've been here, but really doing a lot of intentional work. So, and now you just celebrated what, the 40th birthday? Are you 40?
January. Let's not get there.
Oh, we're not quite there yet. I don't want to quite. But so, Brandon, how many mountains are you on?
I'm on all of them. That's the complexity here. I'm in all of the mountains. Still figuring out how it all works.
So we'll move on to Jim, who has a little bit less complexity. So Jim, Jim, tell us about you.
Well, I first want to say I'm sitting next to the guy that's Jeff Bezos' life in his hands. Those of you don't know, Bezos he's going up in his first manned rocket flight with I, right? I think. So if it crashes and burns, we know who to blame.
You heard it here.
And I hope my wife isn't watching. I don't think she is, but I don't have a picture of her like you do. But in any case, I just a little bit about my career. I've taken a traditional track. I started in hospitality and the family business, and where I was in all the mountains as well. Went to higher education as an academic dean, and now I'm president of Lumberyard, which is a fourth generation family business. And I'm only on the Blue Mountain for the family. Now it's a lot less complex. So having a lot of fun with that. That's a picture of myself along with Robbie and Karen Pine on the left, who are the majority owners today, and with Generation 3, Eva, and then Eric, who is also part of the ownership family today. What else?
So where did you grow up? So give a sense, and then you might even want to introduce some folks that are here.
So grew up in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, which is nearby, and was third generation in the family business. My son is here today, he's working in the family business. My sister and my brother are also here and involved in years in the family businesses. So hospitality, spent 27 years doing that. I was president of the company for a period of time, and then went to higher education for 7 years. And then 2 years ago, I was ready to get out of education and send a resume to Henry and Sally saying, hey, if you know of any family businesses that are looking for a president, I might have some interest. And about a month later, Henry got back to me and said, I might have a place. Didn't tell me too much about it. A couple of weeks later, he sent me the vision and mission statement. And I'll never forget where I was sitting and my heart skipped a beat. The vision for Kime is to lead and inspire others to fulfill their dreams and goals. And the mission statement talks about employees first, customers second, and the community third as well. And the vision statement especially is what really struck me. So that's what I want to be a part of here in my life. So should I just move on into some of the other information? So this is Kime today. It's 55 acres. It's out in the middle of nowhere. That's why I'm showing you this picture. And so Bill Kime, third generation, built a 125,000 square foot retail store in a town of about 80 people. It defies all conventional wisdom. Even to this day, it seems like every week I come across something and I just shake my head. I used to teach MBA students and I say I would never use Kime as an example unless I wanted to talk about unconventional wisdom. It just breaks it in so many ways. But the secret sauce is this incredible commitment to customer satisfaction. And we have 70% of our employees are old order Amish. And those of you who know the old order Amish, and I worked with old order Amish in my previous life, the commitment to the customer is over the top. In fact, we're starting a customer service training program here next month. And my store manager said to me, now, Jim, you understand, I get very few complaints. So this section about dealing with upset customers, it's okay to keep that in there, but let's not focus a lot on that because we don't really need a lot of that. So I've been there 2 years and I don't feel like I get a lot of credit for really what's going on. It's just an amazing place. I want to talk a little bit about something that I think about every day. And actually some lessons learned. I'm an ultra runner. I've run over 50 ultra marathons in the last 10 years. I think some of it's a midlife crisis thing. An ultra is anything over a marathon distance, anything over 26 miles. What happens in an ultra is when you get beyond 35, 36 miles, is invariably you're going to have some issues with energy and you're going to feel nausea. Your body oftentimes becomes a train wreck. And so I've had times where I have a complete loss of energy and you have no idea how you can go on. Or you have nausea, you have liquids coming out both ends, and it's kind of a train wreck. And so having experienced that a number of times, I came up with this idea that whatever you're feeling at the moment, the opposite is coming. And the lessons here, I've learned so much through an ultra about life and business, because you have this race, 50 to 100 miles, and it's like a microcosm of what we experience in business and life. And so it's been a real teaching moment for me. So whatever you're feeling at the moment, the opposite is coming. It's kind of this gloom and doom kind of thing. If things are well, you can have an instant loss of energy. At the same time, I've experienced a 10-mile death march where I can hardly walk, and all of a sudden the energy comes back. Last summer, I finished the 100-mile race, and the last 5 miles were by far the fastest 5 miles of the 100 miles. It makes no sense, and it's not because I'm a great athlete. It's just how things work. However, then I discover that over the course of 100 miles, I can actually have a good race without energy loss, without feeling nauseous. And so I moved on to this. I came up with this. The seeds of the opposite are planted in the present, but it's not inevitable that whatever you're feeling at the moment, the opposite's coming. So how do we build those resilience? How do we build that resilient ability into our lives? And I put that together with something I want to share with you this morning, which is a product life cycle. This is a sigmoid curve, or product life cycle, organization life cycle. I'm sure many of you have seen this before, and I just want to explain this a little bit again, because I think of this almost every day. And I've experienced all sides of this. Does this have a point? Okay. So when you have, on the left axis, you have growth over time. When you have growth, on the right and the bottom axis, you have time. So a company starts, it's born here, it grows, lots of sales coming, it climbs up the curve, and inevitably, this is people, this is organizations, this is church, this is products, this is a nation. I'll let you figure out where we are as a nation. So you grow, you get to a place of maturity, and you start coming down the other side, and eventually possible death of the organization, whatever it may be. Now, the characteristics of the curve is that at point A, all the signs, you're still growing, all the signs that come to you say, you're doing great. Why change? Okay? The problem is, a lot of companies then continue on, and eventually that product matures, competition comes in, and all of a sudden you find yourself at point B. Now, I've been there twice in my career with two different types of organizations, both hospitality and higher ed. And you get to point B, and now you say, we got to start changing. But you have much fewer possibilities as far as change because you're in a much weaker position financially, or the product is now no longer in demand. And so you want to work at change before you need to. And one of my favorite examples of this is the Steve Jobs and the iPhone. So some of you remember, if you're old enough to remember the iPod, which was a music player. And this is in 2006. Steve's going to wrap that into the iPhone. And one of his engineers said, Steve, you understand that if you do this, you're going to destroy one of the best products we've ever had, which is the iPod. And Steve says, yes, I want to destroy it before someone else does. So the idea of creative destruction. I'm going to obsolete my own product before the marketplace does it to me. So he wraps it into the iPhone, and the rest is history, one of the greatest selling products of all time. So a little bit more about the curve. I say here the paradox of success is where you are, what got you where you are won't keep you there. So what we want to do is we want to start changing at point A. The issue is at point A, as I said, all the information coming to us is that we're doing great, why change? And so what you want to do is you want to start a new product, a new business, a new growth curve out of a position of strength. This fuzzy period here I call confusion, because your employees, your stakeholders in general will be confused. Like, why are we changing? It's going great, why change? But that's precisely where you want to change. What COVID has done for us is given us the opportunity to accelerate change in a big way, because there's so much disruption in the marketplace. Now, 4 or 5 months ago, I was out to run, which is when I do a lot of my creative thinking. And all of a sudden it occurred to me that in times of disruption in the internal environment compresses time. So a typical growth curve, when we hit something like COVID, now we have less growth in the same amount of time. It shrinks the growth curves for our products and our organization. Does that make sense? We have less time to respond to the disruptions. And that's the time we're in right now. So what happened at Kime, or what are we doing about this at Kime? Like I said, yesterday I'm having a conversation with our CFO. We're up 40% this year over year. And I said, I'm scared as heck because it ain't gonna last. So what are we doing now? So a couple stories. March a year ago, I think it was the 13th, which was the Friday before things were shut down. We had been talking about doing the next day guaranteed delivery. We have over 60,000 SKUs in stock. We were talking about doing next day guaranteed delivery, anything in stock. And the team said, we can't do that till August or September. Now, this is March. We just can't do it. Too many processes to change. We got to produce a catalog. We got all kinds of stuff we can't do. March 13th, we're sitting around the table, understanding that on Monday it's going to shut down. And we're saying, we want to try and save as many jobs as we can. And we know customers are not going to be going out and want things delivered to the door. And we looked at each other and said, in 2 weeks, we're going to have this together, and we're going to have a delivery service, and we're going to have a product catalog in 2 weeks. And we did it. It went from 0 to 2 weeks at both of them. Now, this is the Amish community, which is not known for a lot of change. And we have something there called time, which means things just don't change around. It takes such a long time to change anything. They've always labeled it as time. And I said, well, let's turn that around and let's use that to market this new service. We call it time to the public, so they understand that things are changing quickly. And we pulled it off. And it's been doing very well for us. The other thing that's happening now is, again, last year, who would have imagined, and I feel almost guilty talking about it, it was a record year for us by far, because of, what's happening with lumber prices, building, DIY, that kind of thing. So I feel incredibly fortunate. It's nothing we've done. It's just the industry working. And at the same time, right now, we are reinventing both our retail store product, and we're reinventing the relationship with our pro partners. I really think, just think about your industry, but in our industry, you have this high demand with rising prices, with incredible labor shortages for building houses. What's that going to produce? That's going to produce massive disruption in how I think, possibly in how houses are built. And that's what scares the heck out of me. I also think on the logistics side, I mean, think of the possibility of Uber for delivery. So I'm saying to our team, we really need to think about guaranteed same day delivery. What if you took the Uber model and used that in a delivery world, and people were driving around with trucks just waiting to get some notice on their smartphone? I don't know. It seems possible to me. So the point is, a lot of disruption happens during these times, and what are we doing to build organizations that can work with this? So I say here, part of the art of leadership is discovering how to maintain an environment of continuous innovation, keeping the workplace intense, yet fun, inspiring, and safe. Now that's a mouthful. How do we keep the urgency of the innovation that we've experienced the last year and keep that going forward with our teams of people? How do we build resilience into the system? We have a strategic plan. We have a 3-year strategic plan. We're going to update that annually, but I don't want to put. I think strategic planning has to change significantly too. What we really need to focus on is building resilient organizations that can adapt in real time. So part of our customer service training this next month, one of the keys, one of the main things we're saying is you have to get permission to say no to a customer. We want to empower our frontline staff in almost every case to take care of the customer's issues. If you think they're trying to take you across, go get permission to say no to them. Otherwise, you say yes. And how do we get people from the front lines, who've almost 600 employees, to be constantly thinking about how they can innovate and create value for the customer in real time? So how do we build resilient organizations? No one can anticipate COVID. So how do we build organizations that can handle the next issue that comes along? One of the ways I think, and am I going too long? I am, okay. One of the ways I think about is generative listening. We listen to our employees and customers in deeper ways. We listen not only for understanding, but for something new to be born. We can listen to someone for understanding, but when we truly partner with our employees and customers and listen to them, going into a conversation and saying, I don't know the answers, they have some of the answer, I have some of the answers. Together, how can we create something new in this time? Those are some of the kinds of conversations we're having with both employees and customers for this time. So that's enough for me.
Well, thank you, Jim. You said a lot there. I mean, you talked a lot, not just about COVID, what we did in the midst of that, we come back to it again. Well, you were in the seat about a year when COVID hit, not quite a year. And Brandon, you were, talk a little bit, COVID wasn't your first crisis. You have a crisis just a month or two, and then COVID, and then how did you deal with that? How was it for you? How did you?
Well, as I said, when I took over in November of 19, I wasn't short of any challenges. We had just came off our record year, and similar to what Jim was talking about. We were in a plan of, well, what's next? How are we going to redefine ourselves? What are we looking at? And we were ready to get into 2020, had a cyber attack. So a ransomware on New Year's Eve, and that was immediately my first challenge as the new president of the company. So we dealt with that, which was really, for me, I think the first thing was just confidence, going into that role, filling the shoes of my father, the legacy of my grandfather, just feeling, not feeling unconfident, but just, hey, I'm going to do it. So that was like the first test for me, I feel like, was just getting through that. And luckily, we rallied together as a team. We were able to beat that together, which knowing going back and looking at that was a blessing in disguise for how we were going to really rally around the end of COVID. So 2 months later, really took us about a month to get it all cleaned up and everything like that. But I can remember the day, March 3rd, just had Employee Appreciation Day. We had everyone together just to talk about where we were headed for the next couple of months, what we needed to focus on, and then snap of a finger, COVID hit, and that following Monday, we were trying to figure out, are we going to be open or not? Are we critical? Just all those things that came upon us right away. But using what we learned through the cyber attack and that crisis, we were able to really just collaborate and beat on each other, just to say, all right, where are we going to go? What's the initial goal that we need to achieve? And the first thing we all came together to say was survival. Like number one, we want to survive. We don't know how this is going to impact us. Let's just put that in mind, is that we want to survive the pandemic. And the second thing we came up with as a team and talking to our employees, there was just so much uncertainty that it was almost too quick to make any big decisions. Are we going to furlough, or we just didn't know the impact. So the next decision we made was our people are so critical to our organization, and that one of our key values is that we treat everyone with fairness, dignity, and respect. So out of respect for our employees and everyone there, it was, how long can we hold on to everyone through this pandemic and not make any irrational decisions so as to immediately lay everybody off to maintain all this profitability or whatever that we want as shareholders. That was kind of the second thing we did, was to talk to the shareholders about, all right, are we okay tolerating some pain? How far can we go as shareholders in tolerating some pain so that we don't have to lay off all of our people? Because we don't know when this comes back, what kind of position are we going to be in? We might not be able to get people back. We might not be able to fulfill orders at that point. Like, what is that going to look like? So, as of now, we have not laid a single person off in our company. We haven't had any furloughs. We haven't replaced folks if they could leave, but that decision is starting to really work in our favor, especially as things pick back up and as the labor force is tightening. But then the third thing that we focused on was cash management. All right, if we're going to tolerate them, what do we have to do to make sure that the company is financially secure? So we created teams around cash management and things like that. And that's all. Now, fast forward to where we're at today. And, looking at where we're at, a lot of what Jim said is a lot of the things that we're doing now. Is, all right, what is our company going to look like now that we're post-pandemic? You saw a lot of us rely on aerospace and commercial aerospace coming back. What is that industry going to look like, once the pandemic is over? How are we going to recover from that? We're hearing now what went from zero, right? Airlines were down to basically zero in March of last year to now, hey guys, we want everybody back to where they were, prior to 2019 plus 5%. And it's like, wait a minute, the whole aerospace supply chain is down, everything is like, how are we going to do that? So that's kind of where we're at in our life cycle right now. It is this, the disruption that has occurred provides a lot of opportunity for us. It's how are we going to change? What are we going to do? Especially if the labor force continues to be tight. What kind of technology do we need? How lean can we make the operations? How efficient, how high quality can we make them so we don't have defects and rework? Artificial intelligence, is there a place for that in testing? How can that work? What do we need? What are the technologies and things that we need to look at? And locations, Jim was mentioning it, that logistics are becoming a nightmare. It's extremely expensive to ship stuff now. So does that mean we have to move closer to our customers for things that are big quantities, cost a lot to ship? Those are just different things. It's really challenging us now to really just think a lot differently. But I would say I don't know if I'd be thinking like that right now if I didn't go through that initial cyber attack early in January. I don't know if I'd have the confidence like I did now to really rally the team to be more confident in my decision making. Putting more on our leaders to help make those decisions. I really don't know if I would be able to do that from those early challenges, and the support, not just from the team but from our advisors, my CEO peers that I get together with.
And Brandon, talk a little bit about what guides you through some of these difficult decisions that you need to make. You've done a lot of work on the values.
So we have 5 values we have in the company: people, integrity, learning, leadership, and profit. And some folks will say, well, why do you have profit? Well, profit's really important, right? If you're not a profitable organization, how can you invest in world-class benefits for your employees? How can you have additional compensation outside of their wages that you can provide? So profit is really important for our growth, for our employees, and for them to really continue and grow. There are 5 main values. And then we have 31 behaviors that we call the LTI way. And those behaviors are really, here's the way we need to live every single day as a company with each other, our customers, and our vendors, right? And we want our customers and our vendors to feel this, what we call an intentional culture, and how we behave to live out those 5 values, right? Because those 5 values, if you don't understand what you need to do or how you need to behave to achieve them, I don't feel like you're ever, it's really challenging to get there. So this model was developed, I think, by Ritz-Carlton and Four Seasons, and there's a company out there that helped us build this program. But it's really been the way that we've operated really since 2016. We started this over, and it's been a huge part of our organization. And we're very intentional about it. So every week, there's a message of the week, the LTI way fundamental is shared. This week's is be positive, right? So we want to try to be positive in everything that we do, provide meaningful gratitude and recognition for folks. And it's just really important to keep a positive outlook on things. So we share those fundamentals every week with the employees. We do employees write about that fundamental. What does it mean to them? We share it at the beginning of team meetings. We share it in customer meetings, and it's really really the thing that really binds us together. It's critical to what we do. It's a huge part of our employee onboarding, and it's constantly reinforcing those behaviors as an organization.
And it's also part of how you evaluate. Is it part of your performance evaluation?
Yeah, it's part of our performance evaluation. And and it's also, every now and then you have someone that comes off the tracks in terms of performance. And you might be sitting there, well, what is it that this person is doing or why? Those behaviors almost you can go to for any circumstance. You can go to those behaviors and say, all right, well, maybe this person was not being process oriented. Maybe they were not practicing blameless problem solving, as they call it, and we're pointing fingers instead of trying to get to the root cause. It just gives us a common language and for us to be able to operate and really call out behavior, which is a key part of being a team. You know, we need to be able to call each other out on the team if we're not doing something that's in accordance with their values or the way that we behave. And it really helps tighten things up as a company in terms of having a consistent way that we need to operate about.
Really, really, really beautiful. And Jim, what would you add? How's your experience with kind of building the culture? Talk a little bit about what you came into with the values and vision. Talk a little bit about your leadership.
I think from a cultural perspective, we already had what I would say a very thick culture. Values very well articulated by the Khan family. I think one of the things we've done since I've been there is we share 20% of pre-tax profits with employees. And so educating on, and Henry cleared his throat over here when Brandon was mentioning profit as a value, because Henry and I had this argument many years ago, should profit be a value or not? We trained all of our employees on how to read a financial statement and balance sheet. And we do that ongoing with new employees as well. We want everybody to understand how you get to the bottom line. I look at, and this is our argument, I look at profit as a byproduct. It is certainly critical, obviously. It's a byproduct of taking good care of the customers and employees. But we want the employees to be right there with us, understanding what makes for a balance sheet, what makes for a profit and loss statement. Employees used to think when we would make an investment that would impact their profits, and they wouldn't like that. That would impact their profit sharing. We explained that, no, that's on the balance sheet side, that doesn't affect the profit side. So things like that. So really trying to bring employees into much more partnership with us continually. The family had already done that well, but even taking it to another level. And how are we really partnering together?
Henry, you want to respond to that? And by the way, how's Jim doing?
Well, Jim did very well. I want to ask Jim about how you came into this culture. This is about a year and 5, 10 years. And here we have this guy coming in from Pennsylvania, Virginia. He grew up in Holmes County. Many people predicted he would fail within 1 year. So, what was your strategy for coming into a pretty solid culture, needing trust so that people would respect you?
Yeah, it's been interesting. It takes, I found over the years, it takes about 2 years of a cycle to gain trust coming in as a leader. And it was listening. It was all about listening, Henry. So one of the first things I did was I gave every employee 5 questions. What's going well? What are the challenges? What are the opportunities? How do you know if you're doing a good job? And what's coming from you? That generated 112 pages of feedback from really 400 employees, 490 employees. And I took that, I categorized that, I took that back to our leadership team, a group of about 80 people, and I said, okay, what are the keys here? What are the things that I should really be paying attention to? What are the 6 things that should be priorities for us? And that was really a good idea, because after 3 or 4 months, I kind of knew what the priorities should be, and they were almost identical to what the employees said. But now they have the ownership of this, because they got to tell me what the issues are. And then we also used that to build our strategic plan. That was the foundation. Took that information, entered into another process with our leadership team. And again, they told us as an executive team, really, they defined what the strategy should be. So, they created that. And, I think they were like, yeah, okay, this is all kind of an exercise this guy's doing. But then when we actually followed through on the priorities and did the things they said, that's what really helped it. So it's that generative listening that I was talking about.
You also did some other things. You were good generative, right?
Yeah, until COVID, a lot of being out and about, I call them short shifts, 2-3 hour shifts in the middle, yard, store, that kind of thing, relationship building. So, yeah, that was a big part of it as well.
So we have a few minutes before we break for table talk. What's another challenge? We talked about resilience, we talked about culture. Let's just talk a little bit about accountability. That's our theme. How are you each held accountable? Brandon?
Well, similar to Jim, LTI has board outside of advisory board and an independent board chairman. And that's who I report to day to day. And also, I feel really same level of accountability to him as I do to the family. So I'm sure that I am working with the management team to run the company to achieve the results that they want to achieve. So I feel like I have two points of accountability, one being our board chair and the other being our family, the shareholders that come to this. So,
Well, I just want to add to that, the shareholder meetings, it's just beautiful, Brandon, the way that you're able to just shift the hats and move from one map to another. I think you do that remarkably well. Jim, how about you?
Yeah, board of directors too. I can't emphasize enough that you do not have a board of directors. Really, should be spending energy and outside directors as well. Time found is committed to having more outside than the inside directors, and that's a best practice. And can't emphasize enough during this time COVID, having a sounding board, having someone there to challenge me, push me, to support me. We had a whole issue with masks. The owners don't like to wear masks. Holmes County doesn't like to wear masks, doesn't like to get vaccinated, and all these things. And for them to have my back, and I could go to the employees and say, the board is saying this and this and this, and we have to respond to that, was really, really helpful.
just to reiterate what Jim was saying, the same for me, our board was huge in terms of there's challenges, in terms of just anything that we were dealing with, management team came up with this strategy. How does everyone feel about that? Or, hey, I would like feedback on this particular issue. So I would not have been able to do it. Our management team, the company would not have been able to do it without the board's support and having that. So usually the first group that I go to, it's a very safe place for me to go with that group. It is a tremendous support system. So to reiterate what Jim was saying, if you don't have an advisory board, I would really consider starting one or starting to at least think about having one, because it is a great thing for leaders not only for the accountability, but for yourself, is to have that emphasis, the affirmation that you are making the right decision with easy decisions or hard, they're either way.
Regarding accountability. Jim asked for a 360 view of all his direct reports, and did that on his own. But the board also agreed to do individual feedback to Jim, and then I, as the board chair, went over to Jim. Now, Jim has an MBA and a PhD in leadership, and I think the humility that one brings to this job is very important, which I think both of these men bring. The humility to listen, actually demonstrating the willingness to really crave feedback. How am I doing? I really want to know what is going on. That's an important component of leadership at any level. So I think both of these companies exhibit that kind of, I think, fundamental team building commitment. If we're not willing to listen to our customers, to listen to each other, whether that's advisors, board members. I would say your customers will tell you what they need, and we often don't listen enough to our customers. So now's the time to be doing that in spades.
I need to say something about the 360. I've been in organizations where the CEO did not do that. Learned from that. And I also, so 6 months into it, I wanted the 360. And then I brought in 3 new folks on the senior team, and 6 months into their time, we did, maybe it was more like 8 to 10 months, we did a 360. And it made course corrections for all of us, especially in terms of the culture. For people to be able to respond anonymously to a number of questions, really, really important, and saved all 4 of us newbies from some really embarrassing may not be the word, but just some of it was just small things that culturally we weren't quite getting, and people were very honest and straightforward. And highly recommend it. It's going to be something I'm going to want to do every couple of years for sure.
Okay, we are going to move into our table talk discussion now. Actually, Jim, you can flip that one. There you go. So we're all going to come back to our tables and going to invite each of you to reflect on and share your thoughts on these 2 questions. What have you learned about leadership through COVID, and what's one change that you have made during this learning? So we're going to take 10 minutes to do that. And then I'm going to invite one person from each table to just share briefly, 30 seconds, 1 or 2 things that was said at your table. So this will give us time to learn around the tables. And then from there, we're going to go take a break, and then we're going to come back at 10:30. So if you're joining virtually, now your break time until 10:30. Okay, so I'm going to interrupt you, excuse me, and I would like to invite one person from each table just to share 1 or 2 things in 30 seconds to a minute, 1 or 2 or 3 things that you heard around the table. And how about we start with Steve? You want to be our first guy to start here? Since I came from the table, I'm in the side.
I'm Steve Barents. I met a handful of people from Iowa Partners. Better? Yeah, good. I think one of the main takeaways is, on a day-to-day basis, when you're, either in your business and you're off, whatever that looks like, you kind of take it for granted as you're walking by your employees or your other staff and your other crew. And, we moved about 80% of our crew off site, basically overnight. And that leadership component can be very important because on a day-to-day basis, they're really looking up to you and they're looking for guidance. And it's easy, again, when you're standing next to them, follow along. But when you're virtual or dealing with some other stuff, it just kind of shows right on. And we've shared a lot of the same sentiment on the table.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, who's coming up here? Paula, come on up. Be coming up from this table over here. Paul, and how about over here?
So,
So decide.
Okay, I'm sharing perspectives that I heard from teammates at our table. So what I heard was shifting to new customer markets, moving quickly, being nimble. You really learn who your key employees were during this time. Also, one of the most challenging aspects was the unknown, managing through it. Also being adaptable to accommodate employees and their different levels of risk tolerance, and living the old adage of knowing, how much you're not in control of and controlling what you are in control of. And labor is still a struggle.
Amen. Thank you, Paula. And Paul.
It was interesting in our table as we went around, the same themes popped out, and it is people. When we first sat at our table, we kind of got into that discussion, but it's amazing what people are capable of when you all rally around a common cause. And in our table, some of it was, just let them do their job, let them be innovators, let them come up with solutions, get their feedback. And it's amazing. Even personally, as our company, we had, well, you think back, all the change that was happening, we had political turmoil going on, first thing in 2020. And then we had COVID. And in our company, we had 2 ransomware attacks in the middle of COVID. And, when I looked at our team and the response and the way people dug in, I was so proud of our team. And one of the things I learned personally is maybe get out of the way a little more and let people come up with the solutions.
And who from this table volunteered? All right, Dan.
Yeah. I forgot to go real quickly. I was like this, but I guess I was the last one. Yeah, I didn't take notes. I'm prepared. It's all you taking notes. I mean, something, basically the theme was basically being flexible. People was a big problem with, losing people during the pandemic. I know I lost my assistant, a couple other lost some key people. And I mentioned the need sometimes, and I wanted to hear Jim's reaction to this, but sometimes you need to lead with, when you're not sure yourself, you need to show, in our case, in a greenhouse, a lot of our competitors cut way back on what they did. So they produce less material. I told my team, like, hey, if we're gonna do it, we have to do it in May. We do 70% of our yearly sales in 8 weeks. So if we're not gonna make it in May, we're not making it. We lost a business through the process, a retail operation, which was a good thing, but it's challenges. And so listening to our people, and that people are really the most important key to it. So a lot of what you guys have to do. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to take a break now and join us again at 10:30.
Through the pandemic and just in general, developing people, delegating to people. And it reminded me of a podcast I listened to recently, Brene Brown. I love her podcast. She talked a lot about there are 2 different kinds of leaders. There are leaders that come from a position of power over, or leaders that come from a position of power with, to, and within. And from everything I've heard from today around the tables and up here, I think these are the kind of leaders that we want to be with, using our power with, to, and within. So, guys, this is really awkward, by the way. I like to walk around, not sit in the seat in front of the camera. Let's talk a little bit about maybe how the pandemic has changed you, or what counsel you would have for others in the room. We want to have a little bit more conversation before we move to Q&A. So anything else you'd like to share with the group on learnings you have had, or maybe how the pandemic has changed you would be great.
So interesting lessons from in change and people. So I mentioned a little bit earlier, 70% old order Amish. Amish live in more of an isolated community, do not want to wear masks. And we have a couple hundred people working in a 125,000 square foot store. And last May, the governor said, we expect businesses to wear masks. So I was taught, I think it's in Rome somewhere, you do what the government asks of you if it doesn't conflict with Christian values. And I didn't think this conflicted with our values. Consulted our management team for about 10 days. Thought I had gone through the process pretty well. Produced a video because we couldn't be together. So I produced a video to send around as to why one of our values is servant leadership. My wife has leukemia, it's a good prognosis.
But I use the example, we wear masks for each other, and you're wearing a mask to protect my wife in essence, who's on chemo from getting COVID. So we decided on a date when we would expect people to wear masks. And that Tuesday came and we had masks there. By the end of the day, I rescinded the order. I had mass, there was a mass insurrection against masks. And because I didn't want to put our supervisors in the position of needing to enforce this. Enforce it now. So they were closed to change, absolutely closed as an organization. I use the analogy of a marching band. If you're the leader of a marching band, if as leaders we get out too far in front of the band, they can't see us, and there's chaos, right? They can't see us with the beat. And if we're too close to them, the people in the back, the band members in the back can't see us, and again, there's chaos. And so we have to be the right distance in front. So we are leaders, but we're also need to really pay attention to followers. So then in July, the governor said, I'm trying to think the order, but it was another level of you need to do this. You need to wear masks. So I had learned, I'm not stupid, always. And I said, okay, I ain't touching this. And I'm gonna, Henry and I are talking, the board and I are talking, and said, okay, I'm gonna present the risk. Brought 80 leaders together and I said, here are the risks. And there's risks to ownership, there's risks to our reputation, social media, public relations, and the obvious risk to each other of passing COVID. And I explained the risks and I just said that. So I'm not gonna give you the answer. You guys figure this out. And they said, okay, we're gonna wear a mask if the customer has a mask. Okay, so then we did that. Then November comes and the governor says, we're gonna inspect you now. And if you're not wearing masks, we're gonna shut you down. So once again, call the group together and say, here's what the governor's saying. They're gonna come and make an example of us in this community. They're gonna inspect us and they're gonna make an example of us. What do you guys think? And they said, we're gonna wear masks, which was huge in that community. We were the only Amish business really wearing masks. But they said for each other, and it was about finances. It wasn't about COVID. Giving each other COVID, it was about being shut down and each other not having income, which is very interesting. And sure enough, 2 weeks later, they expected us, and that's a whole nother story. All the papers in the state as the worst. The press got it wrong. Anyhow, I won't go into that detail. But along this continuum, so they were closed to the change in May, completely closed. In August, arrested means there's some barriers, but there's maybe some flexibility. And then in November, they were open. So it was just this really great example of this in action. How do we as leaders understand, really are in tune with our people and understand where are they at? And certainly sometimes we have to say, this is what we see and we have to make a decision. But the participation in the last 2 meetings I had, and then we wore masks till about middle of April. And that's when I called the county commissioner director and I said, I can't move this off anymore. We hadn't had any COVID cases since Thanksgiving. It's middle of April. Vaccines are coming. And I said, we're going to stop. I didn't ask for permission because they couldn't give me permission. I just said, I just want you to know we're going to stop wearing masks. And we hit it just about right. But it was a real reinforcement as leaders understanding where our employees are at in working. So that's it. That's it.
All right, well, I have 2 things to share in terms of some takeaways from the pandemic. They kind of relate to how it's changed me. The first is the pandemic has exhausted all of us, okay? And I've been reading a lot about the psychological effects of the pandemic. When the pandemic came on, we went into fight or flight, right? How are we gonna survive this thing? My kids are at home, we're both working parents, how are we gonna take care of our kids? Right, my parents are at home, how am I gonna see them? So not only do we have work challenges, but we had all these external challenges facing us as human beings. You know, and we were talking about the economic challenges, the political challenges, so much uncertainty, so many challenges that just immediately hit us with the flip of a light switch. And we were in fight or flight. We figured it out. Or we didn't. We went into flight mode, and maybe some bad things developed as it. You see all the outcomes of that. So we're just dealing with a lot from society. So now I think we're through this, and we don't know how to act now that we're through it. Except that I just look at we're tired. We're exhausted. It's like, holy cow, we did all of this. Now what? So I was just sharing about how I've had to wind down my time a little bit just in the office. 60 hours a week during the pandemic, impromptu meetings, offline, whatever it was, just to get through things and have discussions about what was going on, making sure the company was on foot, making sure that the shareholders knew what was going on, the family. I mean, just all these different things we were trying to balance out as leaders. Myself personally, I came out of this, a couple months ago, just being like, I am worn out. And I think our people are worn out. And, I think it's going to be like that for a little while. And I think as leaders, as we look at our businesses, we really have to find creative ways to not let work in the short term be an additional burden for folks, because I just feel like people are worn out. So as an employer, in a company that is extremely fast-paced, high volume, fast turnarounds, lots of commitments to customers, how can we build flexibility? How can we build, technology and things to make jobs easier for people so that they can continue to deliver but not feel overwhelmed? And I think that's the biggest challenge in front of us right now as an employer, because people are just burnt out and I think they're going to be for a little while. The second thing that I learned, and by nature I like to control things, is that I've learned that control is an illusion. And I think that someone alluded to that with the table discussions. And I'm really quickly learning how to focus on the things that I can control, or what is that one most important thing or two most important things that I need to control. Because at the end of the day, we're not in control of anything. And I think that pandemic really showed us what little control we have over things. So they're the two big takeaways from me in this. And I think just sitting back and reflecting on, oh gosh, how did this change me? I am now probably a more compassionate person than I was in the pandemic. I was really focused on results, really focused on where we need to go. Now I'm more focused on collaboration, how are people feeling, and it's a different style of leadership. And I think that as leaders, we really need to think about how are we leading? Are we in a telling style, like we're in a command and control, we're going to do this is our direction? Or are we, Jim was talking a lot about it, how he collaborated with his employees and listening to employees. I think that's the way of the future, especially with the mix of generations that we have. We have, baby boomers retiring, we have Gen X, we have the millennials, and we have this upcoming generation, and they're all different in terms of how they want to work together. And I think as leaders, the only way if we want to create that team across all those different generations, we have to care, we have to listen, and we really have to understand, what the differences are between those generations and how we want to work together, or if we're not going to be able to move forward as a group. I don't think, honestly, if the pandemic happened, we probably would not be, thinking that way. Jim's point on that curve, we were growing, everything was doing great, people were making money, things were good. But, step back and look at it now, we probably should have been starting working on, these different things in 19. The pandemic got us there really quickly. So, reflections on the pandemic.
I want to really reinforce what you're saying. in 9/11, which started another recession, without going into a lot of detail, I had just finished writing my dissertation, which was on self-direction in the workplace. How do we empower employees? And in crisis, oftentimes as leaders, we're in control. There's a lot of research around it. And so out of 9/11, I was president of the company at the time, and I made a decision that I didn't involve my management team at all. And a friend of mine, speaking the truth in love, he said, called me a hypocrite. He said, you just spent 4 years studying about self-direction in the workplace, and you made a unilateral decision. And what one researcher talks about is our theories in use, what we espouse, what we say every day, and then the theories that we actually, the theories that we espouse about participation, and the theories that we use when we are under crisis. And the research shows that many of us under crisis go to control. And in this situation with COVID, we were meeting every morning as a management team. And what I needed to do early on is develop the culture of those meetings so that people could speak their truth. I didn't want people leaving that room holding something back. And in the Amish culture, so 80% of our management team, about 30 to 45 people, you don't do that. It's a very humble kind of culture. So developing that capacity in the team, like, don't leave this room if you have something to say. And several times it happened for someone that didn't even say, no, I really hate to say something, but this. And it was really a key insight and changed the conversation. So how are we developing, going back to what I said earlier about developing resilience in these times, how are you developing your teams of people so that they can speak their truth, and I say with respect, in a way that is going to be constructive, is really important in these times. And it builds what Henry Sandler talked about, building muscle, right? So we've got to talk about building family muscle and team muscle. And that's what this is so much about. And so it's coming to the point where I go into a meeting in the crisis mode. I don't feel like I have the answers. So many times they suspect that we as leaders, we have the answers and everybody's looking at us. I go in saying with confidence, I trust this team, and we're going to leave with an answer that I never would have thought of or never would have came to. But if I can facilitate the meeting well and develop that resilience, I'm really confident in the team is going to come. And that was really reinforced to me. So I think you're really right. The illusion of control, and that's a myth in Western management. The leader, I say it's the Lone Ranger. The Lone Ranger rides into town, shoots the bad guy, saves the day, rides out in town in the sunset, and everybody's, oh, what a guy. What a guy. They saved us. And the townspeople are still now no less empowered to deal with the next bad guy that comes into town. Lone Ranger didn't save them. He just prolonged the inevitable. It's going to happen. So how are we empowering the teams?
Well, and we go back to what you said, Brandon, about becoming more collaborative, working, with folks. I would also, with the exhaustion, with the self-care. I think modeling self-care. I think all of us, hopefully all of us in the room are doing that, because if we're not taking care of ourselves and modeling that, we're going to fall apart.
The self-care part is huge. That notion of control is an illusion came from multiple sessions with my spiritual director that I see once a month, just to help me in a relationship with God. What does that mean? And where am I going with that? And she really helped me see. She's like, you're in control, and she just spoke right to me honestly. And I mean, that was an epiphany for me. And and it's in my personality assessment. I guess I was good at believe. But she really helped me see it and understand it, and just having that insight, I think early on helped me really change my perspective. And the pandemic just helped them get through it. It's half of the just rolling. Without that support and the support of my wife speaking openly to me as counselor sign, but she is very honest with me, and I have to give her a lot of credit for what we call in our fundamentals a speak straight conversations. Get your head right in this, and everything's going to work out. But just keep keep things focused. And she was tremendous in the success of that. So none of this was alone. So the self help is really good, but too just being able to listen to it and want to hear it, I think was another thing that changed. So.
And I didn't ask Lynn for permission to say this, but I'm going to. I had the opportunity to actually be with Brandon's family. We did a fundraiser, Roll and Stroll Big Foundation. Brandon's on the board there. It's a wonderful organization. Actually, Henry and I, good friends with the founder. They attend to special needs children and family members. But I was talking with Lynn, and I just said as we were walking along, I just said, "Well, how are you doing? It's really tough. Brandon's been through." She said, "Well, you know what?" She said, "And I'm with my friends, and they kind of complain a little bit about their husband. I got nothing." She said, "He is just, we just have a really strong marriage. We're there for each other, and God, it was just a beautiful, beautiful thing." So, and also while I'm talking, got to talk with a bunch of employees as well, and they as well just really so grateful for how you are.
I think this is a good time to think a little bit about the 5 mountains. What difference does family ownership make in a crisis like COVID? And what is the strength that comes from, I believe it's like Jim and Brandon, we're all, these guys have both come out, not perfect families, but really strong families. You've heard the LTI story. Me too. It was just a nightmare. Pain again and again. I mean, it was really, really tough. And Brandon's father was able to hold all 5 of those mountains in a really powerful way. And Brandon, you reflect those values that were in your grandfather and your grandmother, and through all that pain, and now at G3, you really, it ain't perfect. Okay, none of us are, but there's a powerful kind of legacy that I think your employees feel, understand, experience. And Jim, you have really 2 family businesses to think about: the smoker enterprises of various kinds, and then kind. And I like to reflect, at least on the kind, like Robbie and Karen Kind are now the primary owners, coming through a lot of discussion and pain and embrace. And what difference does that make to the culture? It's not just about the leader, it's not just about the president, it's about the legacy of the family.
I think one of the things that I appreciate so much about how the 2 of you work is you work from a family systems perspective, wanting to bring the spouses into the family. Earlier in my life with the smoker businesses, we were working on several transitions, and we got lawyers and attorneys involved. Attorneys and accountants involved. And neglected the family side, the family systems. Now that I'm on the other, I have to celebrate the 6th birthday. Yeah. Now that I'm on the waning side and looking back, and the way in which Sally and Henry are helping build the muscle of the Kind family is so exciting to me, and working for the family, seeing they're not a perfect family. They have come so far in the last 4 years. And as the family gets stronger, the business is also getting stronger. when the family is bringing dysfunction to the business, how is the business going to maximize its potential? So no families are perfect. We all have our issues, but don't neglect the work on the family system side. If you do, I mentioned the business side. So that's what's exciting for me in my role now. I think I have another working with the family that is really developing that muscle and that strength and the alignment. So about a week, 2 weeks ago, I had a retreat with my executive team talking about our whys. What's our why? And inviting the owners into that as well. And we're all sharing that and the influence of that's developed just really gives a sense of strength. That goes out into the full. They can feel dysfunction in the family. They know it. And we've all been through it in our family businesses. Just know they can feel it. And they can also feel when it's really going well. And things are aligning. I mean, I don't, tomorrow this could change, but right now we don't have a data. We're hiring really. We're hearing from people. We're hearing about some of this alignment. And you know, the Amish, after church, the Amish always have lunch together. And that was the original social media. Word gets back when things start going well. And that alignment, I think, is part of the reason we are, because the value perspective is feeling. So, is that what you're looking for?
Yeah, I think there's only been like over 110 years of trust building with the community. And that really does impact your ability to attract people to the company. And I think you're one of the few businesses in Orange County that doesn't have an applicants needed or wanted to sign out for it. So it's when you get all these mountains working together, it's pretty sweet. Now, it is really hard to do. And I would like Brandon to talk a little bit about the burden of being the third generation president. I mean, it is tough, and I think unless you're in it, maybe if you're spouse in it, you understand it, but I don't think people understand that. So could you comment on it? And then I'd like Jim to comment. He was in it before, and now he's kind of the blue guy. Now he's doing a lot of other things that impact the quality of the other mountains as well. But it's different.
No, it is. And it's funny, when we were preparing for this, Jim and I realized that we are opposites. And it's like he has the experience that I went through. So he's got a lot of great perspectives on that. But for me, you know, it's a job that once you know, looking from the outside, you don't know how hard it is until you get there, you know. And really, within the first 2 weeks, aside from our cyber attack, I had a family challenge. That was like, whoa, you know. So it's just hard because all those mountains, you have stuff that crops up in the shareholder mountain, you have things that crop up in the family mountain, you have the management, board, advisors. It's all there, and it's all real, and it's all very challenging. So, I don't have any other words to describe it. It's challenging, you know. And Henry said it. That's why I'm going to say this. Is just that I don't think, you know, being in this position, it's just hard. I think if someone understood how challenging it was, we may not have as many family presidents living in all of those mountains, because it is really challenging. But the good thing is that we know it's there. I know it's there, and we can work on how can we make it not so challenging by working with advisors like the Delaware Family Business, Henry and Sally, having good folks to support us, having an outstanding board, which I think is going to be really critical for our success as G3, is just having that board there to really represent the shareholders, and as Henry and Sally call it, be that buffer between management, mountain, and the shareholder. That's going to be a real key to our success. But I've had moments where I'm sitting there going, my career at Vanguard was pretty darn good, I didn't really have to worry about these things that I worry about today. But, hey, God has a plan for all of us. And just for whatever reason, naturally throughout my life, I've always been pushed into these positions. So, I'm here for the journey. And at this point, I'm just here to embrace it and to see where it takes me, where it's going to take the family, where it's going to take the business. I'm excited about it, and I'm up for the challenge. And that's what I keep telling myself now, is that I'm going to face challenges. It's not going to be easy. We just have to work through it. I've got a great support system, great management team, great board, great family. Yes, we have our challenges. We have a really solid family. And, we've got great advisors, and the shareholder amount is strong. So getting stronger. Yeah, that's a lot of the work that we are doing. Yes, not to go too much longer, but one of the key things out of the pandemic in the shareholder side is we're really starting to think about, like, holy cow, this happens again. Or, what do we want as shareholders now has become like a really important question, after the pandemic. What do we really want as a shareholder? What do we want? How do we protect ourselves on something like this? Especially if the business is a big part of our financial aspect, financial plans, and things like that. How do we further diversify that, or whatever it is? There's a lot of questions that come up in that. But I feel great knowing that we have great support.
When I'd also add that, you are a family business president, and often the company outgrows the family, and we go to outside presidents like Jim. But I think two other key words are important are voice and choice. In other words, nothing is a life sentence. I think that's what you're saying. There's a lot of burden that can be, you're there for the family, for the business, but staying clear about each one in the room. You just know there's always choices. So Jim, did you want to?
The CEO will not be limited to class. Because I get to work in the family business and have all the advantages of family business, which there are many. But I don't have all the hats to wear like Brandon does. And I'm still involved in my former business. And it's just nice, I have to admit, to not have all those hats to wear. I would recommend it someday. But I get the benefits of you talk about in the pandemic, the difference between family and non-family business, as you said, you kept everybody. That's the difference, because my owners were the same way. It's don't overreact. Stay safe. We're in it for the long haul. That's family businesses that are in it for the long haul versus businesses that are looking for the statements. So that's a real advantage.
Good. Okay. Well, we are going to open it up now for any questions or comments. We call this community conversation because we're all part of the conversation. Ask any questions, make any comments, any observations, share your own experience, and any question can be asked, but you can pass on as well. So, Paula, and we'll repeat the question.
Okay, so Jim, this is for you. What about the family? And what play in that?
Okay, so Paul is asking for you to talk a little bit about the dual role in your family business you grew up in and what that's looking like now, and how you're contrasting that with your current role.
You did say we were allowed not to answer questions.
You are.
But it's just strictly an ownership role. It's not a day-to-day active role. As an investor at this moment.
Okay, Dan.
I have two questions. One, Jim, you said about having everyone be able to and sort of interact with the financial. Was that the business's actual financials? You weren't using just generic financials, but specifically the business.
So Dan is asking what kind of financials you showed and taught your employees.
Yeah, so we don't, well, we share 20% of pre-tax profits with employees. They can do the math and figure it out because they're in our sales. But what we did in the training is we looked at the percent on profit and loss statement side. We shared with them the average percentages of the cost categories, the income categories. And so that's how we taught that. And then on the balance sheet side, we explained how to interact side. So I would love to get to the point someday where there's some financial. But for some companies to do that, that's going to be a lot. That's a process to get to that point. Trust issues, et cetera, et cetera. But it's a belief in people having information and sharing more information sometimes than maybe what we're comfortable with. I think gets commitment, certainly understanding, improvements. We just want everyone to have the information to do a better job. And so let's share more rather than less information.
Thanks, and Brandon, this is for you. You said there's a 31 behaviors the LTI way. Was this, you said you used somebody to help you form that? I just want to know like the mechanism to how you got the 31. Is that a magic number? The number is
No. So there's a company out there, it's called High Performance Culture. So the question was, how do we derive the 31 fundamentals that I spoke about? So there's a company called High Performance Culture that you heard speak, and it just resonated with us. And the way that we came up with the 31 fundamentals was we started with the shareholders and say, hey, what is most important? You know, they give you a menu. There's probably 100. Every company is different. Some have 15, some have 40, some have, we finished at 31. We just went through an iterative process. We started in the shareholder mountain. Then we went to the, I think we started in the family mountain, which is basically the shareholder mountain. And those two, what is most important to the family, the shareholders. And then we went down to the management team, work with the management team on, you know, hey, what resonates well. Put the two together and we came out with 31. That's just kind of how we ended up there.
Say a few of them. You said it
Yeah.
speak straight as
Well,
well.
to what Jim was alluding to with the financials, we had one called practice transparency. And, you know, that's just giving everybody the information that they need. You know, we share information freely so that people have the information that they need to do their jobs, but also with confidence, right? We don't want, you know, folks, there has to be a certain level of confidentiality for certain things. But we're also fully transparent with our financials and share the financials of the company and have a system for that. That speaks to who we are as a business. You know, so some other ones are practice problem solving, be positive with a healthy lifestyle, keep things fun. Having plaster on a wall for folks to do by,
By the way, the employees that I spoke with on that rolling stroll that we'll talk about.
you have to do it again. You try to go for less. I mean, 31 to me sounds like a lot, but was there any feedback?
You know, it's different for every company. You know, we're by nature detailed people. So engineers and things. I think the 31 resonates well for our company. And I know another company there. I think whittled it down to 15 because they want to be at a higher level. I don't think they do that many. That's just our organization.
All around behaviors.
Yeah.
Other questions or comments? Aaron, I'm gonna bring it to you.
Talk about the 20% share with your employees, also doing profit share with employees as opposed to KPIs? What do you do about it?
We're working on the KPIs. We don't pay salespeople commissions. That's unusual in our industry. It connects directly with our customer service. We don't want our salespeople selling products to people, but because they get a bonus on those products. Times like these, other companies are paying some pretty nice bonuses based on piece rate and things like that. We have a manufacturing part of our company. Some pressure from some of my managers to say we ought to be paying piece rate too. People are leaving at the end of the week and they have cash in their pockets versus we pay every 6 months based on the profit. And I believe in the long run on this, and we want people with us that are not just motivated by that piece rate. The other thing that happens there is, we're organizing small teams. We want to be working lean, we want to be working small teams of people. In situations where you have piece rate, people just want to go home. They don't want to get together after work or first thing in the morning to talk about how we can make this better because you're holding them back and getting their piece rate done. So it's just a philosophical thing for us. Now we are working, we want to get to KPIs for each of those teams. And I could see someday, I want to be flexible in that, where maybe a portion of their profit sharing might be based on how they are doing as a team to make that closer connection. I would just say every company's different and culturally, but this is how we've been, and I don't want to make a big change in that. I want people focused on the long run. I'd love to play around with the ESOP idea. I think we would be a company that would be right for ESOP. Again, that's long term. So I want people with us that are thinking long term and not just short term, what's in my pocket today.
Brandon?
We have a profit sharing bonus plan, but it's all based off of company performance, and we're all in this together. It's not individual, and that's been really powerful, and I reiterate that every year that we're all in this together. We have different business lines or different product areas. Some of them are going to be up some years, others are going to be down. And over time, that portfolio will perform at a certain level, but you can't do it with one without the other. Yeah, the question was, is there, I guess, a bonus target based off salary, how to arrange or.
If everything's here, you're higher value.
Yeah, there's a pool. Yeah, so we have, everyone has, we have a balanced scorecard, critical metrics that, each executive team member is responsible for certain metrics, each department. But then, at the end of the year, there's a pool, and that pool is divvied up among, team members for various different, metrics based on the job function or whatnot. Yeah.
Other questions? Comments that you guys have for each other? Questions that you have for each other?
Just a comment. I was just really thanking Jim for just your sharing, your openness, and some of the things you shared today, especially with Curve. Just sitting here thinking about how it does that, what we're doing now, thinking from that fuzzy point, like what does the next growth cycle look for us now that we're in this different state. I was calling it our COVID business plan. What does that look like? But I actually think it's more our post-COVID business plan, but it's more, ready. We were thinking more in the terms of ready to rebound and what does that look like? More short-term tactical. But your thought on where we're at in that curve is really critical, that we're really starting to think more about the longer term. What does that really mean? Yeah. we're thinking about the questions, but getting them down and really being intentional about where we're at in that cycle. I think is cool. So I really appreciate you sharing that.
Thinking this seminar for the art, something with the art of leadership. You know, I think that's the challenge for us all now because last summer when the business really started taking off, salespeople across the country were just drowning in the business. And the challenge we have is managing the growth, not managing the opposite of that. And what happened again, in a period of a number of months, restructuring, changing processes, we changed so much that never would have happened without COVID. And so then I think each of us need to say, the art then for me is how do we keep that kind of an acceptable level of pressure or intensity in our work, but keep it fun. Right there, I think, is our challenge as leaders because our companies have now shown that they are much more adaptive than any of us thought, 18 months ago. But this isn't going back. We're not going to get back to normal. This is fundamentally changed the pace of change and the acceleration of that. And so that's what I think about a lot. How are we now going to keep that the right level of pressure and keep adapting and changing?
Randy, I think your shareholder group is working on the curve. It way. And you want to talk a little bit about the word. The word isn't broken, but what the kind of realizing is that before they had to do it, dad's do it. Not just stuff.
Yeah, really, I mean, looking at the board, really, it's a level above that, and shareholder amount is really, I've said it before, what the heck do we want as shareholders, especially after facing a pandemic, Mike, when he passed the baton from G2 to G3, he had made a comment about, I would love to see LTI be a 100-year company. And the G3 were like, holy cow, that's the first time he's ever told us that. So it kind of put some pressure on you to be like, wow, we got to make it 100 years. Well, he just recently said, even from him seeing what happened in the pandemic and everything, he's like, well, I don't know, is a 100-year company the right thing to do? Is that, so it just got us questioning all these things. What do we really want as shareholders? And where do we need to be? And answering those questions and doing that work will get us to that point of what do we need from our board of advisors to get us there. Because we do have a fantastic board right now. And even though they are my father's board, I call it G2 board, they are tremendous advisors for us. We just have to look at, once we do figure out these goals, are they the advisors to really help us achieve those goals? Skill sets that are needed there for a variety of different reasons. So that's some of the fuzzy work, and we're in that period of transition just to really figure out where we need to, how do we set ourselves up to
Hit on a key question there. What do I want? What do I need? What do we need? What is the continuing shared need? That comes from everything else will grow out of that changes. Any other comments that you want to make in closing? Anyone up here?
Thank you. That was a great opportunity. Just really appreciate you asking us to come out and talk, and hope there was some takeaway value there for everyone today. Just really appreciate coming out for a live event. I feel like the live event is, we all need to experience one to get over the hurdle, just to remember what it's like to be at a live event. So I appreciate everyone coming out to my talk. So really appreciate it. Thanks, everyone. Sally.
Okay, well then I just really want to thank you, Brandon and Jim and Henry and my team. I mean, we've been reinventing like you all as well. When you have to
without you all. And we thank you for coming and also want to talk about the next few events coming up if we have them on the slide there. We have one coming up July 8th on buy-sell agreements, the do's and the don'ts. That's going to take place at Fox Rothschild. And then we have one coming up, I think it's September 22. That's on the Advisor Mountain about herding cats. And then we have one in October, and that's on women who have succeeded their parent, either a father or a mother in business. So stay tuned for to learn more about that and show up. And just thank you again for coming and enjoy the rest of your day.
This is one.